for the Uganda Cancer Institute and the Palliative Care Association of Uganda, also with their conference that starts today and ends tomorrow, right here on UBC TV. They all start immediately when we set off and when we leave office, rather studios this morning. And with me in studios is Mr. Paul Bukenya, the spokesperson of the Uganda Electoral Commission, joining me today. You're very welcome, Mr. Bukenya.
Thank you, Juan Jagenda. It's good to be on UBC TV.
Thank you.
And thank you for welcoming me.
Well,
I look forward to a good engagement.
Thank you very much. When I talk about you and say Paul Bukenya of the Electoral Commission is here, people think, well, maybe there's a by-election, or they even have to ask, why Electoral Commission at this time now? We don't expect to hear anything from the Electoral Commission. Why are you here?
No, we an institution, a commission established by the law, and we are a permanent commission. So we are not there during elections. We're there before, during, and after elections. Okay. We continue activities even after elections, and we've just gone through an election cycle, organized and conducted it and concluded it successfully. Okay. And now we are doing some engagements out there to connect with our stakeholders and tell them what's going on, what are the issues, what actions are going on, what's coming next after conclusion of the roadmap for 2021 general elections.
Okay, well, you talked about the election cycle. When does your cycle start? When does it stop? When we tell we are now in another cycle and this cycle has actually come to an end, what shows that you've ended the cycle?
Well, you could say that the Constitution talks about regular elections. So for that reason, we plan for the general elections over a period of time. And the general election cycle, if I could briefly break it down, involves what we call pre-election, and then you come into the actual electoral cycle when you do the activities related to the elections, and then you have the post-election cycle. We are now in the post-election cycle, or in the post-election phase. But basically, the elections start with planning. So we've organized, conducted, and concluded the 2020-2021 general elections, because by law, that exercise is done, and all the administrative issues around it, technical issues, legal, have been conducted and concluded. And we have leaders at various levels. But as the Electoral Commission, now the people or the organization which organizes the elections, we've gone back to the drawing table to start the planning for the next cycle of elections. And also to handle issues that come up every now and then in the election environment, including by-election. For example, if a by-election comes up now, when a vacancy occurs, we have to conduct elections.
Are there any unique issues or any key issues that we, the stakeholders, need to know or pick from the elections over 2020-2021 from that particular conduct of those elections? Are there any unique issues or key things that we, as stakeholders, need to pick from you?
Yeah, we look at it as a successful exercise. The fourth election to be organized under the multi-party dispensation, and the sixth under the Constitution of 1995. Remember, there was 1996 election, 2001, 2006 was the first under multi-party.
Exactly.
So 2006, 2011.
So we had two before the multi-party.
Yeah.
We had two in 1996 and 2001.
Yeah.
Then 2006. It was a third under the Constitution, but the first for multi-party.
For multi-party. So we see also that there's a journey in that direction with multi-party, but also constitutionally being able to beat those deadlines is quite unique and an achievement. It's something we tick off as a country as a success. But also because it was unique given the COVID-19 environment, some countries had to postpone the elections, which created issues around constitutionalism, and freedoms and all that. We were able to go through it with all that modification that we did, and we look at it as a success. And then the high participation. There were political parties that participated, and then voters themselves. And now we have leaders at various levels of governance, from the presidency, and we come down up to parliament. It's fully constituted. Then we have local government councils at the city and at the district, and then we come down to municipalities and sub-counties and town councils. So those are, and of course, special interest groups. We'll look at that as a success and a very good practice by Uganda and Ugandans, for that matter, to have their leaders elected through elections.
Not so many countries on the continent of Africa do organize general elections. They normally organize, if they're organizing presidential elections, they're predominantly presidential elections. There are those that you hear organizing presidential, maybe parliamentary. There are those that you hear have special dates for maybe municipalities or local leaders or local councils. This is unique to us, and I just want to know what you go through to organize a general election that cascades from the presidency to the villages down here, including all the special interest groups. What are those things that you go through to actually make this process a success? And we think that's the best way to go, or we think there are things in there that we need to change and maybe throw away some and maintain some?
Well, one of the things we've just been doing in the recent 2-3 weeks, actually over 1 month, has been an evaluation of the exercise that we concluded recently. And when you do evaluation, you look at the good, the bad, and even the ugly. And the ugly. There's so many things that you can look at and say, this is good, this didn't come out well, and this was bad. You need to work at it. So that forms part of what now you can discuss as, can we keep this, can we put it away? But to go back to where it started from, each country has a unique electoral system. For purposes of Uganda, the electoral laws determine when we should. The electoral laws, the laws establishing the various offices, the presidency, the Presidential Elections Act, Parliamentary Elections Act, and then the Local Government Act, and the acts establishing special interest groups prescribe when we should organize and conduct the elections. So general elections are held, and the word general elections for that matter means those elections which are held to elect positions after the expiry of a term of office. And it's as opposed to a by-election where vacancy occurs. So in Uganda, the term of office is 5 years. And so the laws describe, or rather prescribe to us when we should start the planning. So that's why, for that matter, like you mentioned when we were starting the program, we are not sleeping. We're already looking at the next general election cycle, leading us to 2025, 2026. Of course, we start with an evaluation of the last election. How did we do it? What areas need to be strengthened? What areas need to be considered for review, to change, or to strengthen, or to even expunge from our laws and take them out completely. So when we do that, then we draw what we call a strategic plan to identify areas that need funding, training, capacity, all those areas, and then you do a roadmap. We know that as per the law, if you're a politician out there, you should know that the general elections are going to be held in January 2026, and that's not far away. So that means the bulk of work has to be done between 2024 and 2025. That is updating the National Voters Register, displaying it, the political parties organizing and conducting their primaries, the nominations being conducted in 2025, campaigns starting there, and then procurements, production of election materials, voter education has to be continuous. So basically, those are the things that we do to prepare a general elections. We've started with the planning, evaluation to inform our planning, and the areas that we will need to advocate for funding, areas that we need to present for consideration for review, amendment of electoral laws, and then voter education, capacity building, training, technology, all that. So at the end of it, our first starting point will be producing the strategic plan and the roadmap, which we'll release and share with stakeholders so that they start planning. Otherwise, for Uganda, given that the general election is a big undertaking, it's financed over 3 financial years. So we produce this in time and we share them with the government, and the funding starts in a phased manner. So that by the time we come to polling day, that day, we've done much of the work, and we're just settling some bills with workers, temporary workers, and materials, publicity, voter education, and things like that.
What are your biggest challenges as a commission? When you look at the entire cycle, where do you find challenges, most especially away from the funding bit of it, because that's now Parliament, of course, approving and appropriating money for you. But you as a body that is charged with elections in this country, which is your hardest rigors or hurdles to jump over in the entire process to when we get into elections?
Well, there are different, at various levels we encounter various challenges for which we always have to prepare to address. But I think one of the challenges that we have, of course, you can't run away from funding. We need to have funding, for example, adequate funding to do continuous voter education. It remains a challenge. we need to have a population that is aware from start that yes, they have a right, a duty and a responsibility in this area, and we have to continuously engage with them. We have to be here on UBC all the time and get quality airtime on other radio stations, in all forms of media, to continuously engage. But it also helps us to know the issues that need to be addressed. As you reach out, you also get to know issues. You're not just educating, you're getting feedback. And one of the challenging areas are the laws. The laws that are in most cases reviewed and amended way into the general election cycle. Like I told you, we know that we're going to have elections in January 2026, as per the law, our constitution as it is now.
You know when it's supposed to happen?
We know.
Because you know when the term ends?
It's a 5-year, it's a 5-year, and it started on 12th of May this year. So it expires on 12th of May, 2026. And when you look at the law and you say that you must organize general elections within
120 days
the
before?
first 30 days of the 121 days actually of the term of office, we know that the elections will be held in January and slightly into February of 2026. So that means when now we finish our evaluation and we identify areas that need to be reviewed and amended, the lawmakers, the stakeholders responsible for that need to move fast. When a law is amended in time, it enables us to prepare, it enables us to educate the stakeholders, the political parties, the candidates who are aspiring to contest. They prepare well and they participate from a point of knowledge and they are empowered. Okay. If a law is amended late, it causes several issues, both to the Electoral Commission to do voter education, funding can be difficult, and other things. We've seen that happen, and we've engaged with the government, our line ministry, the stakeholders, that let us always move fast enough so that we do this early, because we know that there are going to be elections. Although sometimes certain things can come up and you can't blame the lawmakers. It's a recent development, it's a new technology, and you can't predict certain things.
How do you feel as a body still when you look at so many litigations coming up, where in most cases you're part of these litigations, saying somebody so-and-so is running to court, because of course it's also constitutional. It's also constitutional. It's part of the process that Jagenda lost an election, but he thinks and feels he lost because of X, Y, and Z, and so the only thing to do is I now need to go to court to hear me out. But how do you feel when you see so many people go to the courts of laws and in most cases citing and bringing up things that were possibly you're doing, that it's not the Electoral Commission that did the right things here, and that how do you feel?
Yeah, I think first of all we need to know and understand that the petitions, for that matter, I think that's petitions are part of the electoral process. And when you talk about the general election cycle, because you actually talked about it, one of the things that is part of the electoral cycle is actual election petitions. The electoral process, as it is characterized by complaints. They feature prominently at every stage of the electoral process. I can tell you some of the complaints that we handle. Maybe they don't get that prominence. When we start demarcating electoral areas by the law to determine the areas for representation, we get complaints. No, this parish, and that parish, no, this ward should be here, it shouldn't be there. Those are serious complaints. And then they are heard and determined. We work together and they determine them. When we register voters, which is very key in the electoral process, registration, and bring out a voters register, it generates issues. The process, the time we give, the places where we do the exercise from, the technology we use, issues come up, and complaints emerge, and we address them. Sometimes they can go on all the way maybe up to court, but many times they are addressed. Someone is either right or wrong, but it's their right to complain. It comes up to nomination. We handled so many complaints after the nomination, especially after the political party primaries. So many complaints came up. No, I am the rightful candidate to represent this party. Oh, the process in our party was not fair. So all those are complaints. But again, most of the complaints I think that most people get to hear are related to polling day. But the complaints and then subsequently petitions are part of the electoral process. They are a very good thing. They are healthy. It means that there is a mechanism for addressing your grievance. Otherwise, the option would have been getting a stick and hitting everyone around. But there are peaceful ways of addressing issues, and they help us to inform future actions. For example, we learn from petitions. When a petition is successful, the court can give us guidance that don't do this again, do it like that, and it becomes part of our law. But the Electoral Commission has done fairly well, given the number of electoral positions that were filled during this time. And looking at the issues which were not managed or concluded, where complaints escalated and went up to courts of law. You can look at parliamentary elections, where we've had people going to, for example, parliamentary elections. Petitions, we have more than 34, 35 petitions already withdrawn.
34? Oh, yes,
I mean, rather dismissed.
Dismissed, yes.
We had about 15
withdrawn,
cases withdrawn. And there are about 43 that are waiting judgment. They've been heard, and I think the arguments are good. The positions of the commission are good. We're waiting for the judges to determine that, of course. 2 cases, of course, have been ruled that we should organize by-elections. Of course, they are on appeal. There's a case in Soroti City and a case in Aru in Padeo district. But if you look at parliamentary elections, you can see that given the number of petitions we've had this time around, and given the number of people who participated, candidates and the political parties, it is fairly lower compared to the last election. And now with so many withdrawals and dismissals, and you can see that they have upheld the result of the elections, which means a good job was done. But in any case, whenever there is a petition, Mr. Jagena and then the viewers, you need to know, you need to look at the grounds, and I think look at it. Is it on the part of the Electoral Commission? Was there non-compliance on the part of the Electoral Commission?
Exactly.
Because in most of these cases, you see that we are respondents because you organized and conducted the election. So someone has gone to court because maybe a media house did not give them their right, and it's a ground. And when the judges hearing it, they say the Electoral Commission issued guidelines. Is he called as a respondent? Or maybe a security officer conducted himself or herself in a manner that he did not, violated the rights of another person. It could be that a person drove a car into a campaign, and or it could be that someone tore the posters of a candidate. But it could also be because of an institution, or maybe the Electoral Commission, a returning officer, or a presiding officer at a polling station. So we need to look at the specific grounds and then see. Otherwise, sometimes and in many cases, it's not because non-compliance was on the part of the candidate or of the Electoral Commission. It could be a candidate who did not make a good declaration. They made a false declaration. And it was not detected by the authorities. And when they presented themselves to us, everything was right. They got on the plane. They flew out of the country, and they were intercepted in a third country. So you can't say that. You need to look at it, I think, and break it down. We're doing that because we learn from it, and it helps us to reach out to the other stakeholders, which is also why we need voter education to be continuous.
How many by-elections did you have the previous elections?
Well, I did not have that ready on my fingertips. But by-elections occur are held when a vacancy has occurred. We did have some by-elections arising out of death.
Yes,
of elected candidates. We had some candidates who passed on at parliamentary and local governments. For example, now the first by-election notice that came to us was the death. Because the chairperson of Kayunga district passed on. Kayunga. And we have to organize a by-election.
You haven't done that?
We've not yet done that. We've been having a COVID-19 environment and partial lockdown. With the reviews that were made, we think it's going to guide us on that.
That's imminent that you have to have that.
So you can see that the by-elections that we had a factor, all those factors. A resignation here, a death. There were some deaths. I think we had the death in Isinjiro.
We had about 9.
We had a death in Katakwi. We had a death in. There were several deaths.
We had about 9.
And then there were court rulings as well, where a court said go back but I think that's something I need to give you.
And why I asked that, I think you had about 35 or so, 35 or 38. I'm not also very sure on that particular one. But I wanted to know your preparedness for these by-elections, because when you look at what we have now, you talked about 45 that are waiting for judgment.
And that is at parliamentary level.
That's at parliamentary level.
Cases at local government level.
What about if court says, these should go back into by-elections? How prepared are you as a commission in terms of materials, resources, and of course finances?
Well, like I said, petitions are part of the electoral process, and for that matter, we plan for them and we budget for them. But of course, we use a percentage. We know that there could possibly be so many by-elections. But if maybe 10 in a financial year, and we look at it as a financial year, because you cannot predict precisely. But we based on previous experience, previous knowledge. We don't wish anyone to lose their position, because we organize the elections so that they go into office. But if, as and when, we do not have enough money for by-elections, and then a by-election is required to be held, we go back to Parliament, we go back to government, we go back to the Minister of Finance. By law, we present a budget and we say there is a vacancy here, it has occurred, and it needs to be filled. It is law, and it requires so much, and then there's that facilitation. But because by-elections are part of the electoral process, we do a minimum budget for it for every financial year. We are not in a general election, so we cannot say that we have a budget for by-election that's big for the entire so many 300 constituencies we have. No. But we do create maybe there'll be 10 by-elections. And maybe in a financial year there are only 3, but when that money is not used, it goes back. So, and if we need more money than what we've budgeted, we will definitely go back to the ministry. Okay.
Issues of transparency, especially during the electoral processes, the people normally talk about these issues of transparency, and I think it's also very cardinal that the Electoral Commission comes out to give us what measures have you put in place, look at what we've gone through, and as we also prepare for the period that we're getting into of 2021, 2025. Or 2022, I don't know how you even call it, but we talk about the next cycle. Issues of transparency. What are you doing as the Commission to ensure that is ironed out, and people pledge that trust and say, yes, this is predominantly a transparent process?
Well, I think we have put in place transparent processes, but on first of all, I think it starts in the law. The law requires us to conduct electoral activities in a transparent manner, straight from the start. Like now the engagements we've been doing, which are part of evaluation, it has involved the stakeholders. We've been reaching out to stakeholders. I saw the stories run on UBC, openly getting feedback and talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly that is in the electoral environment, so that we make it a good process together. Our processes are transparent. From the time you issue the roadmap, you issue it 3 years in advance. It enables everyone to know the timelines and to prepare. That is transparent enough. That's fair to everyone. And then you go into, activities that you're doing. You don't do them in the boardroom. They're out in the open, the demarcation of electoral areas. It's a participatory exercise, the reorganization of polling stations. Where should we put polling stations in your area? The recruitment of officials who conduct those exercises done openly, and then names pinned up. If you have an objection, you can raise it. The registration of voters, it goes through processes that are fair to everyone, including citizenship verification, national ID issues, and the nominations. After nominating candidates, we make available their documents. That's why we get so many complaints after nomination. Their documents, the candidates for nominated candidates, the files for nominated candidates become public documents for a period. Of course, we withdraw them to go to prepare the ballot boxes, the ballot papers. 7 days to 10 days, they made available. The campaigns, of course, we had a modified campaign this time around. But the polling processes, if you come to the polling processes, done in the open, the counting is done at the polling station. A copy of the declaration form is left behind. That's why you saw many forms that were flying around, some even adulterated. It's because they are public documents. The register is a public document. It's online. How more transparent can you be? The transmission of results, for the first time, we had screens in tally centers where you could look at the results, how they're coming in and flowing. And then every other process. And of course, when someone is not satisfied with that, that's why some people have challenged the results of the elections. And you can see that a number have been dismissed, and others withdrawn. They've lost interest. No, I'm not going to be successful with this. I think I need to withdraw.
Let me pull it out.
I think the laws determine the transparency, and it has been done. it doesn't mean you can't improve on it.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Paul Bukenya. Still with you here to continue talking about the post-election period, look at the issues and the actions. We'll take a break and return thereafter and continue the conversation before we leave studios for Uganda Cancer Institute and the Palliative Care Association of Uganda with their virtual conference that starts today and ends tomorrow. We'll come back shortly.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda Extra.
My home, I smile when I think of you, Uganda. My home. My home, I dance when I look at you, Uganda. My home, oh my Uganda.
I know. With you I'll always stay forever. I know, because I feel that we belong together. My home, under the sun so bright, under the moon at night, on my heart, mommy, oh my Uganda.
Hey, mama. At MTN, we look forward to starting another exciting journey together to grow our home, Uganda.
Five times the winning, yeah. 5 times the happiness, yeah. 5 times the luckiness, yeah. 5 for 5, oh yeah. It's 5 for 5. 5 for 5. 5 times the money, yeah. 5 times the shopping, yeah. 5 times the prizes, yeah. 5 for 5, oh yeah. It's 5 for 5. 5 for 5.
Win 100,000 Uganda shillings weekly in the 5 for 5 jackpot. Simply download the Center mobile app. Click Center on the go to open your account. Online, transact 5 times or more using Center mobile, Center Visa, and Center Agent to stand a chance to win. The more you transact, the higher your chances of winning. So, participate in the 5 for 5 jackpot and win millions in daily and weekly prizes. The 5 for 5 jackpot is brought to you by Centenary Bank. Our bank, Centenary Bank, is regulated by the Bank of Uganda. Customer deposits are protected by the Deposit Protection Fund.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda Extra.
Well, this is Good Morning Uganda Extra. Thank you so much for choosing to be with us again. My name is Jagada Semakola Ziksoka, right on UBC TV with Paul Bukenya, the spokesperson of the Uganda Electoral Commission, talking about the post-election period and looking at the issues that are in and the actions. Yes, Mr. Bukenya, coming back to you here. Thank you so much for elaborating on the issues so far that we've engaged on. Let's talk about the places, the elective positions, where all of them failed. If not, what happens to those that were not failed?
Yeah, during the general elections, we set out to fill all the elective positions which are, in the structures. Of course, the presidency, the parliament. We have filled all the elections at parliamentary level, the cities and district local governments. We set out to nominate to have all of them filled. But of course, there are a few places here and there, really scattered around, where for one reason or the other you have a position that was not filled. There are some positions where we nominated candidates and the candidate died so close to polling day that we could not do nominations again. And
Did you have that?
We did have a few incidences like that.
Okay.
And so we didn't organize for that. We called off that election. You may look at, we already got feedback and reports on that. We could look at a place where there was no nomination for a certain elective position, councillor for this youth, councillor for older persons here, a councillor for this position. So we do have scattered incidences here and there. And of course, we organized a program for them so that they also filled up and they have their leaders elected to have full councils. It's mostly at local government councils.
Local government councils.
But that's because there are so many elective positions to fill. and you could find that, especially a result of death, or even on polling day, there are 1 or 2 cases, and I don't readily have it here, but we do have a schedule where we got reports that at this polling station or in this selective area, because of a mismatch or a misspelled name or something like that, a symbol, the people said, no, we cannot have the elections. You remember we had some elections we called off, then we organized them the subsequent days and the subsequent week, but there are those that refused to totally do, they failed to agree. And there are few really. Okay. But for the major part of it, we have councils composed across the country, except for those which have now happened.
Isn't there a specific timeline in the law that you're supposed to have these? We not look at the by-election, we not look at a person who has died during the course of the period, but for those particular ones that didn't happen, isn't there a timeline to those that you should have them? Because we are missing out on time. You're supposed to be in office for 5 years, but time is running out of us.
For local government elections, we have to fill them within 90 days. 90. So there's a timeline. Of course, if a vacancy occurs at parliamentary, we have to fill it within 60 days. There's been a situation of national lockdown due to COVID-19 as a measure to prevent the spread of COVID-19. It did not enable us to organize. You remember in June, when we concluded the elections, we came up with a program and a budget for organizing by-elections to fill such vacant positions. But I think just as we rolled out that program, it should have been around 18th of June, there was an announcement of a national lockdown where we could not even move from district to district. Sure. So that could not allow that program to start. We've been engaging with health officials on how to create, or rather to review the situation and develop guidelines that can allow us to organize and conduct electoral activities. You know that it's not been possible for people to come together to gather. Electoral activities are very interactive. So I think this is a situation that's now going to be reviewed. We've been waiting for guidance, and there's been a lot of support to us, also pending other reviews depending on the situation of COVID-19. Okay. But I think for those areas, we are going to be communicating now with the reviews that have come up on how many people can gather. We're going to continue with the Ministry of Health and come up with the final guidelines. What positives did you pick from this particular exercise that we had during the COVID period over the hybrid election process, over the convention and the scientific? What positives did you pick from it? Yeah, during our evaluation, which has been ongoing, we've gotten feedback on the successes of the guidelines for the campaigns and then the challenges. There was a problem and a big challenge of interpretation of the guidelines and the application. They say in this place we agreed a district COVID task force to organize ourselves like this, and we were successful. At this level, we found it challenging. There was it is hard to control the support, because if people want to show you support, they do it in big numbers. They don't do it when they are quiet. So it was very, very complicated in some of the areas, and we also had some confrontations between candidates and security agencies. We noted those as big challenges. But as successes, we were able to limit the risk, to actually control that risk of spread of COVID-19. During the exercise, we saw that people were adaptive. They adapted quickly to new methods and of engaging, and they were participatory. So we've looked at media as key area to develop, and we've looked at non-contact means that include even enhancing the use of visuals, banners, posters, things that look ordinarily maybe elitist, but they can also reach out, because if they are in translated languages, they can reach the communities. You can know that this is the candidate for this position. So there's a set of feedback that we've gotten, but interpretation, application, they were varied, and sometimes conflicts along those lines, and that's why we saw even some issues escalating to real confrontation there. Otherwise, basically, the feedback from the population is that they got to know about the candidates, and that's why they voted them anyway. They got to know the candidates and they voted them, and they got to know them through these other means that were created. Okay. So other than the mass gatherings that we're used to.
To researchers, scholars, investigators who would love to write about elections, study about elections, do all the things, can they access these documents? Do you now have them ready if somebody wanted to access the documents maybe for the parliamentary elections, of presidential elections, local government elections? How do they access them, and are they ready available anywhere, anyhow?
Yeah, some of the information results from the elections already up on the website. It's in the public domain already. The general elections report has been written. It's going to be presented to Parliament by the Minister of Justice. I think we just need to wait a little to get that, because it has to be officially presented. And then it will be made available, but it has been written and compiled. The evaluation report is being compiled, because we concluded that on the 18th of this month, just the other weekend, so Saturday. But observer election reports, we've gotten observer election reports, which also tell a lot about how things went. Media reviews and all that, we've put a lot of that information together. I think we are within the period, because the period of 6 months is the period given to us within which to compile all that. 6 months after the general elections. They are now done. Just in a little while, I can say that much of this will be uploaded on the website, that which is not yet there. Other results are there, declaration of results forms, some reports which are available with our resource center, and other materials about this election. We've already started getting scholars, researchers reaching out to us about this election, because it was unique. And also other countries, other election management bodies are sending in requests to look at our guidelines and see what they can adapt. So the information is largely available. That which is not yet available will be shortly. For example, the report, which is ready and just awaiting to be presented. Did we benchmark any African country before we went into the election? Because we had those that had elections before us in 2020. Did we benchmark any? And if any, yes, which one is that? Of course, we did look at other countries which are also organizing electoral activities. We didn't physically move to those places, but reading their guidelines on their websites, getting information from them, how they're organizing, and also the associations which manage elections or which coordinate election activities, or which do studies and research on elections, like, you know, the IFES, International Foundation for Electoral Studies, and African Union and others. And we saw the ones which had reasons to postpone the elections. We looked at that, and of course we formed our view. World Health Organization reports, but countries like Zambia, which had by-elections and regional elections, we looked at even the US, they were organizing elections around that time. Ethiopia put off elections, Burundi organized the elections. We had, of course, Tanzania was just across the border. So we did look at other countries. Yes, we did look at other countries. But also the most important document we looked at is our constitution, which determines how we should organize, when we should organize elections, and then the consultation with the Minister of Health officials and other, you know, authorities in this area. So it was consultative, but of course we also consulted stakeholders. If you recall, we did have some meetings with stakeholders and say, guys, we have a deadline, a constitution which has not changed despite COVID, and we need to get there. We need to modify our guidelines and achieve a constitutional timeline. Yes. Somebody sent a question here, a message here, to say that they came to the Electoral Commission, they were asked by court to come and look at your biometrics. They wanted to verify something, I think from Gomba. And when they got to you told them you had borrowed these biometrics from some other country. Where did you get them? We thought these were machines. Did you take them back to where you got them? No, the way we use biometric, and I hope I got that right, the way we use biometric equipment, we do an arrangement where we purchase and also do hire purchase. Rather, we get equipment. For example, let me use a figure, because I don't readily have a figure here. Sure. Let me use a figure and say we need 1,000 biometric machines. When we do the agreements, we do, part of that is for keeps and part is hired. So after the exercise, because you can't keep all that equipment, and it is idle for the next 5 years, the technology is changing, you can't use it, it's not value for money. So what we do, if we know that we have 1,000 polling stations.
That's why I personally do not want to buy a machine to make ballot papers, because I think it's very expensive to have it here.
Yes, sometimes that is and that's also an argument we had with in some circles about printing. High quality, that is high security. That what's the volume of work? You don't have work every day. And that's why some of our capacity is not yet there. Not because people can't get it here, but they say, I get a machine at so much, intensive, capital intensive, and then I use it once, and then I can't use it for the next 3 years. And after 5 years, the technology has changed. But to get back to biometric machines, if I use that figure that I've created here,
1,000.
1,000, you make sure that you at least hire, you hire, you know, it's like a lease. You've used the 700 will be returned back to the owner because you don't need it after that for the next 4 years. But the 300 you keep because once in a while you'll have a by-election and you will need to use it around. And by the time you get back to the 5 years, the technology has changed. The registration system here has changed.
So you wouldn't want to have a bulk of stuff that is just
you wouldn't have to have that
because of technology.
And I think that's it. It's not because of any other reasons. I think it is value for money, and it is in the agreements. So it's like you say, we have a very big function, and we've hired so many cars. We will keep one. The rest will be taken back to the owners after the function.
Okay, well, so your roadmap is out for the next cycle? Is that out?
Well, no. The roadmap for the 2025-2026 general elections is not out.
It's not out.
It's what we are now working on. But basically, the journey to 2025-2026 is started because this one has been concluded. And we know that you're going to have elections. By law, the term of office is 5 years. It has not changed. So if the term of office started on the 12th of May, 2021, it will expire on 12th of May, 2026. And everyone who is in office under that arrangement must know that.
Okay.
And for us as the institution that organizes elections, we've started the processes. You start with evaluation, then you draw a strategic plan, and then you issue a roadmap, and you start the journey, the different activities.
It's possible that there's somebody who is turning 18 today, there will be somebody turning 18 tomorrow, there will be somebody turning 18 on Saturday, there will be somebody turning 18 next month, the other month.
Definitely.
How do you accommodate for this? Because we've also had these issues of saying 2,000 more. They said I think 2 million. 2 million who turned 18 are not on the register. How have you started planning for those? Because there will be somebody turning 18 today, and by the time we get to 2025 or 2026 into elections, there will be so many 18s who should be on that register.
I think that's one of the issues we've also got in the feedback in our stakeholder engagement, and one of the groups that reached out to us for the youth, they said we are left out because every day someone is turning 18 and you close way before the general elections. You closed almost a year to elections. Why did you do that? So I think it's an issue of the law. We need to look at the law. The law does not provide for provisional registration. That for those persons who will be 18 in January 2026,
should register.
They can register even when they are 16.
Produce evidence, then
and then register. I think that's something that needs to be explored. But as it is, there's a time within which we can, by law, we are supposed to register persons who are 18. As at that time.
Okay.
And when we closed registration on 23rd of December, 2019, and some people were saying, why are you doing that? Elections are in 2021.
You have a whole year of 2020, and of course by December 2019 we didn't know that we'll have hiccups in 2020.
But
nobody
again,
knew that COVID was coming.
We came out and said the general elections actually start with special interest groups, and special interest groups elections are starting in March 2020. And by March 2020, we must have a national voters register ready. Because the special interest groups are part of the general elections. That's why we start elections for youth and older persons with disabilities. You know, those they start their councils and committees which build up to parliament.
Okay.
And that's a general election. So I think it has to be looked at in that direction. But as it is now, a person who is 18 now, I think they should go out and register, go through the citizenship verification with NIRA, indicate where they want to be, and placed as polling stations because the system coordinates it well. And then they will get on the system. You can actually start the process now.
Okay.
Then, of course, if as and when the law is considered and maybe reviewed, we will look at that. Okay. But for now, it is open to register as a voter. Okay. And actually, I would advise that someone does it now. If you've turned 18, go and register and relax and wait and just keep updating yourself, your features. But then before we start the general elections, the general elections, that is around 2025, we will create a general update where we will do a final call. And that's when we close. Okay. And as the law is, we close and we start the general elections, and they start with special interest groups. Okay. And they build over a period of time. That's why we close so many, because we have to process what we produced anyway, display it, and then start using that register for special interest groups. For the first elections that happen. So then the political parties want to use the same register. Imagine someone who has participated in political party primaries, and you've just turned 18 and you come and you participate in political party primaries, and the party nominates you, and you come to the National Electoral Commission and you're not on the register. So even the parties need our register. It becomes their register as well. Because your register is final. Yeah, it is final. So I think there is we need to have good conversations on that, and we will be doing more programs here, educating people so that we understand and appreciate why we close and cut off, even when there's someone who will turn 18 on polling day. Your final comment in just 1 minute. Oh yeah, I thank UBC for inviting me here to talk about issues and actions in the post-election period, and of course the viewers out there who are following up on these issues. And we appreciate, we thank Ugandans for participating in the general elections. The general elections are over. We want to appeal to you to work with the candidates, the leaders who have been elected. Same to the leaders, lead. It's time to lead well, so that our country prospers and progresses. Okay. Yes. Well, I want to thank you so much, Mr. Paul Bukenya, the spokesperson from the Electoral Commission. Thank you for joining us this morning, and of course for talking to us about this post-election period, sharing with us the issues and the actions, and we'll wait to hear and to see. If any by-elections come on or come up, we'll still need you, we'll still come back, and of course, even when there are no those others, we still need to talk about the election period, because elections are not like Christmas. They don't come and it's Christmas. You don't plan for Christmas for the whole, but even some people do. So we'll still have these engagements with you. Thank you so much for having allowed to join us here this morning. We now stop this here for our Good Morning Uganda Extra segment for today. We'll return tomorrow, but just want to let you know that the Cancer Institute and the Palliative Care Association of Uganda also have their virtual conference just right here. It is a third conference which will be happening today and tomorrow. Stay blessed. For God and my country. Good morning.